began in 2007. My ex-husband was granted a divorce. He had two attorneys, went through two attorneys who both told him he would have to, it was a marital property state, so he would have to give up some of his possessions and his money, and that because I had disability and hadn't worked in a long time, that he would also have to pay alimony, and he didn't like that, so he finally found himself a third attorney by the name of Lisa Martin, and she contrived a story that we weren't really married. And I have the same marriage license anyone else in this country has. I'm as married as anybody else considers themselves to be married, and I'm here to tell you that if anyone thinks they have protection of any kind because they have a marriage license, they're wrong. The judges rule from the bench without regard to the law, and do so at will. And this particular judge, Paul Riley, bought into the story, and I've actually got the divorce document with me because people don't even believe me when I say it. And on the last page, it says that they did not have the, and this is quote unquote, partnership arrangement that is at the core of marital property law in Wisconsin. What does that mean? And who is he to make this decision? Because of this decision, I was deprived of the marital property law. My husband had declared on his financial statement a worth of $750,000, and it was much more than that. That's just what he declared. So not only did, and I had testimony, written testimony from doctors stating that I was disabled and unable to work, and I couldn't afford $10,000 for the doctors to come in and actually testify. So they just disregarded the letters, and I ended up with no property settlement, with no alimony, and I'm currently living on Social Security disability, living in a van, and he's worth over $1 million. And so I walked out of the court with, of course, they did protect the attorneys, because at that point I had owed my attorney $26,000. So it was ordered that, it's funny that that was the amount that he had to pay so that the lawyers could get paid. So it cost me over $30,000 in attorney's fees to get the judge's decision of that it wasn't a true partnership, which is at the core of marital property law in Wisconsin. So, I mean, marital property law is marital property law, period. Simple. 50-50. So that started the ball rolling then, and it just went into every branch of the Waukesha court system from there. After this decision was rendered, I mean, I was absolutely devastated. At the time, I was living upstairs with my son, and I tried to go to two lawyers to appeal the decision, and while they all said you have a great case, but you have $100,000, and of course I didn't have anything at that point. So the whole theory of appealing is in itself a very it's a myth. Just to get an appeal heard is, I've got some statistics in here somewhere we can talk about later if you're interested on due process and appealing. It's pretty much non-existent. So then I decided what I was going to do was to take it in my own hands, and that all I could do would be to tell my story. And so I did that. I put up a website with my former husband's name.com and with the JudgePaulRiley.com. and waukesha-court-injustice.com, and told the story of what happened. Again, I wanted to get the message out that if you think you have any protection because you have a marriage license, that can be over within a minute. It says this, if this judge made my marriage null and void. So I told a story on the internet. There was no, everything was backed up by fact. There was no, there was no maliciousness. There was no, it was a very well done website, simply telling my story because I felt it's all I had left to do. When my husband found out about it, he went to the courthouse, Waukesha Courthouse, paid $164.50 and got a restraining order by checking a box on it that something to the fact that I was a danger to society and I had a weapon, to surrender my weapons. And he checked the box, yes, that he did consider me a threat. I've been a peace activist since I was 12 in 1965, and I wouldn't pick up a gun if you were to point one at me. And he clearly knew that, but he knew by checking that box that guaranteed him a restraining order. The restraining order, when I was served, told me that I was to cease any internet postings about him. And I when I was reading the restraining order, I thought, this is America. You can't restrain free speech. I have the right to free speech and expression. And I thought, if anything, when this does get into court, he will be the one who's punished for abuse of process, for malicious, wasting the court's time, because he had nothing. Restraining orders are for people who, to keep someone from harming someone who's made threats, I did none of the above. I put up a website telling my story. So I thought, this is going nowhere. And so I refused to stop posting or take down the website. In fact, I added to the website what he was doing, that he was trying to restrict my freedom of speech. So when it got to court, then again, I thought I didn't have money for an attorney. He brought an attorney, and I thought I thought he was going to be laughed out of the courtroom, and that I would walk out exonerated with no charges. Well, instead, he had his attorney, the same divorce attorney with him, Lisa Martin, and they went through all their storytelling, and then I was able to cross-examine him, and I asked, I showed him the paper where he checked that I was a threat to him and to society, that I had weapons, and I said, is this true? And I showed him where he signed it, and I said, have you ever seen me with a gun? And he said, no. I said, what, you checked here that I have a gun and that you think I'm a danger. I said, have I ever threatened you or anyone in any way, shape, or form, physically or verbally? He said, no. And I said, but you checked this and signed, and that's how you were able to get a restraining order against me. I said, that in and of itself is fraudulent, and you perjured the court to get this. And so again, I'm sitting there thinking, this guy's in a bunch of trouble. So instead, the judge says to me, did you defy the restraining order? And I said, I continued to use my right to free speech, is what I did. And I'd like to read to you the quotes from the judge in response to my telling her that that I have freedom of speech and that I committed no crime. This will take just a second. I've got so many websites. They're all down now because I was ordered to take them down, and the case is still pending. So, so she said, don't give me this banner of First Amendment rights and virtue. You are shutting up now. She went on to say, if you're unhappy about this court order, you get to cry in your pillow. She said, it is your right to appeal within 10 days. I'm not encouraging you to do that. I think it's actually stupid if you do it, which I took as a direct threat, against my right to appeal. And of course, with that, I mean, she's telling me, don't appeal. You'll just get in more trouble and dig yourself deeper in the hole. So, and all this is in a transcript that I have, all these quotes. And then she further said, if you go out of here and start discussing this with a cadre of your friends, and they get all energized for you and decide to emotionally help, you are going to get a charge. So she put down her order. She gave him a 4-year restraining order, told him to come back after 4 years and she'd make it a lifetime restraining order. She reamed me up and down, and she said, you are to immediately take down all websites within 24 hours. You are never to post anything on the internet again. Never. I'm not to discuss. Right now, I'm in violation. I'm in contempt just by being here, telling the story. I was told not to tell the story to anyone. So, so I looked at her and I said, okay, I guess we're done. And as she was writing the order, and I said, may I leave? And I could, all of a sudden I saw this activity going around the courtroom, and she says, yes, you're free to go. And so a friend of mine was with me, and I got up to leave, and as soon as I opened the court doors to walk out, there were 3 police officers there, and they handcuffed me and arrested me and took me to jail. I spent 24 hours in jail, and they couldn't come up with a charge, and so after the 24 hours, they just said, leave, go. And I said, leave, go. What's the charge? You kept me here 24 hours. They wouldn't let me make a phone call. So they just said, of course, just get out. We don't have to say anything, just go. So I left, and I took down the one website about my husband, and then it just made me create more websites about the judiciary. And I went and got a website for every single judge's name: Judge Michael Boren, Judge Donald Hassan, Commissioner Linda Jorgensen, by the way, is the one who made all those comments to me and about my banter about my First Amendment rights. So I just made one after another. So then when Commissioner Jorgensen found out there was a website up about her, she was furious. So she contacted the Brookfield Police Department, and they did a big investigation. And at that time, I had left the state because I was afraid, and I was living in my van. And so I went over to Minnesota and just kind of traveled up and down the river there for 6 weeks. And so I didn't really know what was going on. Well, during that time then, Lisa Martin, the attorney, my husband's attorney, I also had a website up about her. So she found out about her website. Commissioner Jorgensen found out about the website. So this set off a big tirade. So because I was out of the state, they couldn't, they didn't know where I was. So they went to my son's house where I had lived prior, and they actually searched his house. They confiscated all of his computers and said, asked them where I was, and they said they didn't know. They made all kind of lies to my children, saying that I was still contacting my ex-husband, which, absolutely false. My son, again, believing that there's, still that there is some kind of justice, or that they would, the police certainly wouldn't make things up, believed what the police officer was saying, which absolutely devastated me. That without discovery, my children would believe that. So then. So I went to Minnesota. I came back for my granddaughter's birthday, and stayed at a friend's house there. And the police came and knocked on the door and said, "Is Jill Ferguson here?" And again handcuffed me and took me to jail, and set my bail at $1,000, which they knew, being indigent and homeless, there was no way I could come up with $1,000. So I was in jail for 30 days. My kids wouldn't talk to me because they felt, well, they believed what the Detective Lagash from Brookfield Police Department told them, that I continued to harass my husband, which I never ever did. There's no proof anywhere of any emails, of any phone calls, of any altercations of any kind. So when I was in jail, I decided I wasn't going to eat. I thought, I'm a 60s hippie, I guess. And I thought, oh, well, I'll just go on a hunger strike, and that will draw attention to the injustice in this county, and surely someone will care. And no one did. I would try and call the TV stations, and they're just like, well, call us back tomorrow. We've got a cat in a tree or something, we have to cover. So I spent 30 days there, and then finally I convinced my sons that I shouldn't be there, and I said, please get together the $1,000. I'll find a way to pay you back. So in my hunger strike, I lost about 25 pounds, and in 28 days, I was taken to the hospital twice, again against my wishes, because when I went to jail, I would not sign a medical release for them to treat me. After I saw what the government can do to you, I thought, I'll be damned if I'm going to put my health care into their hands, and so I refused to sign it. So, when they took me to the hospital, I said, you don't have the right to treat me, which they did anyway, and then sent me a bill for it. So, it's just been it's been a horrific journey from start to finish. During the divorce, my husband's real estate partner didn't want me to get any of their holdings, and so she tried to come in on the actual divorce action itself, and I had to pay a lawyer to defend that, and the judge said, no, this is family court, business partners don't get to come in and plead their case. So then she took it to civil court and tried in civil court to protect her interest in the business. And again, I had to get a lawyer to defend her malicious lawsuit. And so then I took that to small claims court, because both of her petitions to the court to get jump into the divorce were denied. So I thought, okay, surely I'll be able to recoup my attorney's fees in small claims court, since both judges told her, no, you have no place in this divorce, and that was denied as well. So it's just at every turn, unless you have a high-powered attorney who has connections with the judges, for whatever reason, you're out of luck across the board. And so I guess that's kind of the short version of my story.